These weather patterns are getting worse. Most of our jobs now are repairing weather damage.
Yeah, I really hadn't noticed.
Then again, being stuck with you for cycle rotation is just as exciting.
Space. The final frontier. The limitless potential of the great unknown has played host to a bevy of memorable video games over the years, many of which have attempted to display the vastness of our universe. Fort Solis, a sci-fi thriller set on Mars developed by Fallen Leaf and Black Drakkar Games, opts instead to keep things claustrophobic. Taking place almost entirely inside a sprawling research facility, Fort Solis jettisons frills out into the stars, hoping its narrative will be enough to see you through.
Your comms just went local. Please tell me you didn't remove your helmet.
You know I don't like to wear it all the time.
You are Jack Leary, played by Roger Clark, an engineer who arrives at Fort Solis following the triggering of its alarm. Unsure as to why the distress message has been disseminated, he weasels his way inside the locked-down facility to quell his curiosity. Fellow scientist Jessica Appleton, played by Julia Brown, communicates with Jack remotely as he explores. The cast is rounded out by veteran voice actor Troy Baker, who plays Wyatt Taylor, the lead officer on Fort Solis. All three cast members contribute fantastic performances. Best known for his work as Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2, Clark yet again exemplifies why he's one of the best in the biz.
Still got it.
A game with this much of a predication on narrative can live or die by the quality of its performances, so it's a relief that everyone pulls their weight. Once inside the station, Jack begins slowly exploring its abandoned rooms. Everyone seems to be gone, caking the environments in an uneasy atmosphere. As you take in the sights, Jack will comment on what he sees, often prompting Jessica to add a comment of her own. These exchanges occur frequently throughout the game and are instrumental in keeping the player engaged.
Remember that time you hit a 7-ball on Chris? He lost his mind.
I think it was long gone before that.
Yeah.
The rapport between Jack and Jess is very sharply written, and each exchange never lasts more than a few seconds. This means that you never have to stop moving to make sure you don't cut off their conversation by accidentally triggering another one, a common issue in games that feature dynamic exchanges. Oftentimes, Jack can interact with one or more objects inside a room, leading to even more banter.
Look at that little guy go.
How's the search going?
It's ongoing.
Yeah, sounds it.
As you continue exploring Fort Solis, it becomes clear that there's little resistance in your way. I'm only showing the early portions of the game in this review, but it's important to note that you shouldn't expect this to evolve into a survival horror experience. There aren't any weapons, and despite consistent references to zombies, they won't be making any appearances on Mars. Instead, you'll uncover various video and audio logs that help paint the picture of what's happening and what's gone wrong. Fort Solis is a game about conflict, not combat. That's not to say the action won't pick up at times, it does, at which point the game employs frequent use of QuickTime events in favor of more fleshed out mechanics. The QTEs do require quick reflexes, but even after failing a number of them, I was never forced to replay any section of the game. I'm assuming you could reach some kind of game over screen if you screw up enough, but that never happened to me. Either way, these sections are few and far between when compared to quietly combing through the station's various rooms. While this is consistently engaging thanks to the script and density of the game's spaces, Jack moves too slowly. Outside of context-specific moments, there's no way to convince Jack to pick up the pace beyond a casual stroll. This isn't as egregious at first, but as the situation becomes more serious, it just doesn't make sense that he wouldn't begin moving with more purpose. Movement is made more frustrating by strange momentum. Taking your finger off the analog stick doesn't stop Jack in his tracks. Instead, he'll take another step or two before standing still. It's bizarre, but ultimately amounts to little more than a minor annoyance, as you never have to maneuver with any real precision. At all times, Jack has access to a diegetic map on his wrist, and you'll likely find yourself opening it frequently as you delve further into the labyrinthine corridors. It's a cool UI, I wish more games would incorporate their maps into the world itself instead of making them a separate screen, but it's not the most useful. It doesn't show you where you are in a specific room, just the general room that you're in. If you're as spatially challenged as I am, you may find yourself walking in and out of rooms, having to check the map in quick succession to get your bearings. Thankfully, for the most part, I found it easy to understand where to go next, but there are some moments of backtracking where it's easy to get a little discombobulated.
Solis has been up here for years. Must be starting to show its age.
I think we are long past that. Solis is vintage.
We're back at the bar.
No. I knew I should have taken the bottle with me.
It may sound like I'm floating into some black hole of negativity here, but Fort Solis does a lot right. Here's the thing about this game. It has a very specific goal. It wants to tell a compelling, mysterious story over 3 to 4 hours. The relative interactivity may be low, but it's a page-turner, so to speak. It's easy to get cynical about that. The obvious question that arises is, why does this need to be a video game? If the developers are so intent on prioritizing its narrative over its mechanics, why not just make it a movie? Well, I'd answer that question with another question. What's a video game? Now look, games should always function well. Movement should feel fluid and natural. It should be easy to maintain your bearings within the world, etc., etc. Fort Solis slips up on these fronts, sure, but it seems that often games that lack a ton of different systems or fail states are looked at with skepticism and cynicism. Why shouldn't this be a movie? Because in a movie, Jack would be making himself walk. I'd no longer have any say. It's as simple as that. There's something to be said for slowly walking through a room at your own pace. You can soak in every detail at your leisure and can revisit a room just to see if you missed anything the first time. That's the beauty of a game. Sometimes it's not just about winning or losing, it's about controlling the experience, being an active participant in a story rather than just a spectator. I mentioned in my review of Celeste that game contributes to the medium of video games growing up. I think Fort Solis does too, in a different way. It may not explore complex themes of growth and mental health like Celeste, but it pushes for a cinematic level of quality that seemed completely out of reach for most video games, even just 10 years ago. Fort Solis certainly isn't flawless in its execution of these ambitions. Despite looking gorgeous oftentimes, the game is filled with strange lighting and texture glitches, and there were a couple of occasions where I lost control of the camera until I exited the room I was in. These issues were by no means game-breaking, but in an experience that clearly works so hard to immerse you, these imperfections are all the more glaring.
Okay, some good news. I think my work here is beginning to pay off.
Fort Solis can be a hard sell. At $30 and 3 to 4 hours long, the value proposition can seem a bit skewed, even with optional collectibles scattered throughout. Depending on what you're looking for out of a video game, it may be the complete opposite of what you want. It's ambitious with regard to its storytelling, but cuts corners with regard to its mechanics. You need to be in the right mood to really enjoy it, but if you've got a few hours to spare on a rainy night, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Fort Solis is a flawed, engaging thriller that's worth a trip into orbit.
To think you wanted to spend your last shift watching me do all the heavy lifting.
Jess, I am on vacation the minute tomorrow's shuttle arrives.